wasn't until early on that I realized that the church hides pedophiles. Hi, my name is Phoenicia. So I was born in San Diego, California, and I have about 7 or 8 siblings that I know about. I was raised by a father who was put into the system. He was adopted. It was around the time when you weren't allowed to have a child that was mixed black and white, and that changed us. I mean, that changed the way the dynamic of our life, how it ended up. My dad wasn't able to find his biological mother until we were in our, I want to say 5 or 6. Basically, when I was 5, I was either 5 or 4 years old, and my siblings and I were put in foster care. We were put in foster care because of the condition that Child Protective Service had found us. So I was really young to remember bits and pieces. However, I had other siblings that remembered more of it. But we had wet clothes. We didn't have very much food. We were in and out of different locations from hiding from our father. Our mother was hiding from my father. My father was getting out of the church, and she wanted to stay in the church. We were heavily involved in the Christian church in San Diego, and there's different denominations, so I don't know the type of denomination this was. I just remember that we were taken, to different locations because they were hiding us from our father, and there was different lawsuits going on at that time. I didn't get a chance to fully indulge into those lawsuits until I was about 16 because I was so curious. I wanted to know what happened to us when we were kids because I was acting out, and I was so curious, and I was wondering why I was feeling the way I was feeling, and I couldn't break this feeling of wanting to die. And I was trying to run from it. I would go on long runs. I would sneak out of my parents' house when I was like 12 and 11. This is after the foster care had happened. We were not in foster care very long. However, being in a dark room in a dark space for a little over 6 months is enough to change a kid's life. And for my mind, I felt alone, and I never wanted to be alone ever again after that. I always wanted my siblings next to me or someone next to me because I felt so alone in that dark space. Sure. Foster care can change a human into something they never even thought they would turn into or want to be, unless they have the help that they need to want greater for themselves. So the foster home that I was in, there's about 5 kids of us, and we're all spread around San Diego County. I being like the middle in-between child, was put in an area where I was separated from most people because I was constantly screaming, and I didn't sleep very well. I had insomnia. And it took about 6 months before, Child Protective Services released us to my biological father. And he actually, when we were young, was able to find an attorney with my grandmother, who he had actually found, which is his mother, because he was in He was adopted. So he actually found his mother during this time. And my dad's girlfriend at the time, who's now my stepmom, was able to find each one of us individually. It took a really long time. But I remember seeing this woman, I didn't know who she was, coming to us and picking me up and putting me in her van. And it was life-changing because from that point on, I felt like a whole life or weight was lifted off of me, like a whole weight was lifted off of my head. But just that little dark space of being alone for as long as I was enough to me to realize that to cherish family. And when I was like 5, going through from place to place with the church and seeing flashbacks when I was 15 and 16 of being in a garage, laying on trash bags for days, having scars. I still have scars from, we had like bugs. I forgot what they're ticks. So we had ticks all on our skin. I had the worst case. I literally had, dug my skin out because it was so painful. We didn't have very much. It was the weirdest thing, but we were moving. And, as I'm reading through all of these lawsuits that were going on at this time with the church, and in between my dad getting out of the church and my biological mother, staying in the church and denying the abuse that was going on, just denying the fact that her children were suffering from not only neglect, but also from was suffering from loneliness, is suffering from not eating. We weren't able to eat. I mean, we literally were living on trash bags and then moving from place to place to hide, to make sure that my father couldn't find us, because she was, again, going with the church and doing what the church was telling her to do and doing whatever, being brainwashed into believing that it was okay to do what she was doing. And she didn't even know. She probably still to this day doesn't even know what she did. And all she can say, now that I'm 31, is that she's sorry. And how can you be sorry and not know what happened when it was clearly right there in front of you? You were blind to it. You gave access to your children to people, strangers, that abused and raped your children, took their innocence away. The memories that I had was my brothers were told to lay on a bed. We were put in a closet, and this man, it's still kind of a blur, and I still ask questions about this all the time, of them trying to tell them to do certain acts. And it's awful. It's awful to say that, that's the memories that I have of that. And I tried to block it out, and I don't want to hold it anymore. I want to let it go. And I always, today, even when I was 16, up in the time that I was getting older, I just wanted to take care of my brothers. I wanted to take care of my sisters, and I wanted to make sure that they were always going to be safe, and that, whatever my father needed after taking us out of foster care and finding our grandmother, what was to keep them safe. And I did whatever I could, if it was cleaning, if it was cooking, if it was making sure that they weren't going to get in trouble in school, and I was making sure that they were okay. So that was my main goal, was to protect them. It wasn't until early on that I realized that the church hides pedophiles. They hide them. They literally change their names. They move them around. They protect them. And there's not a damn thing that we can do. There's not a damn thing that we can try to find them. Like, you have to spend a lot of money to find these people, track them down, and try to bury them. How do you bury them when you don't have any physical proof, only what you know or you remember. It's really hard for me to talk about what had happened because I still to this day have blocked it out. I know what happened to my brothers, and I don't want to know what happened to me. But I have a really good idea because I started thinking about doing things that I didn't want to do or thought of doing. And I was thinking it's okay, to do those things. And I taught myself, I said, no, it's time to know this is not okay. You need to break the cycle. The cycle is not going to end with what happened with you. It ends with where you end your life at that point, at ending the problems. And so it's just hard. And people ask me all the time, like, why haven't you settled down and have kids? Well, I have standards, and there are still things that I deal with in my own mind that I'm battling, that I'm trying to make better. And so just going through the trials and tribulations of foster care, no one should feel left out. No one should feel left alone. No one should feel like they can't come to someone and ask for help. And, for the longest time, I felt alone. I think I'm just afraid to say it. I'm afraid to talk about it. And maybe in a way, I'm like protecting people. It's just, I don't know. For me, I'm trying to push all of that behind me, and talking about it has helped. It's too hard. It's like, I think I want to always protect. Yeah. I think the biggest thing that that I wanted to know about, and that was inside of the lawsuits in court, had to do with the neglect and the ability to have a sane mind and be a mother and know that your kids are not in a good condition. Like having, knowing, like you know your kids have tics, you don't take them to the doctor, and you wait till foster care or child protective services finds out what you've done. And that's the biggest thing for me. And not having food to eat. Like, what was more important to you than not to take care of your kids? And why did you let it go for so long? What was your excuse? Or did you have an excuse at all? And so that's my main thing, is protecting the kids. The kids are the biggest thing for me, and knowing that they're safe and that they're never going to be to go through that. Yeah, so after the situation that happened in San Diego and getting us back out of foster care, our father moved us out to Palm Springs area. And, Palm Springs was a growing city, and it still is after 10 years. It's, we moved to Cathedral City, and Cathedral City is in between Palm Springs and Rancho Mirage. Most people know it as Coachella Valley, where they have Coachella festivals and Stagecoach. We grew up on 30th Avenue in a beautiful house, and my dad finally obtained to acquire to buy the house. Growing up, I went to elementary school here. I went to James Workin Middle, and had some really cool siblings that, we were putting all of that past behind us and starting a brand new life. And while we're making a brand new life of ourselves, my dad's starting an entrepreneurial business, opening up a surveillance company on his own, which I actually fell into his footsteps. So everything that he did, I was right behind him, learning everything and picking up everything from him. And so that's pretty much how I was able to get into the things I know today about real estate and learning about, providing, being a provider. So I learned how to be a provider from my father. And so whatever he needed, he said, you know what? You don't have a mother. You don't have a mom. You're the oldest daughter I have. And he told me that if I didn't step up, that our family would suffer. And I had to step up. I had to grow up fast. I had to take on responsibilities and wash clothes, make sure my siblings are on the right track, and while he was still looking for his future wife. And I took on a lot of responsibility for them. I lost my childhood trying to take care of my siblings and mother them to make sure that they were on the right track to live life to the fullest. It was a time when my dad started dating this woman who's now my stepmom. She, she came in my life. She was young, and she had a daughter who was my age, so we got along really well. And, growing up in this house, it was very strange because it was a beautiful house. It was nice, but at the same time, we always had an issue where we could hear creaks, or there was either a spirit, I want to say, a kindred spirit, or maybe not. I don't really know too much of what it was, but there was one day that my sister, she was 15 and I was 16. We had just got out of ROTC, junior ROTC boot camp, and she was, laying on her bed, and I don't know what happened, but she just woke up out of her sleep like something was trying to hold her down. And I was thinking, man, there's something wrong about this house. There's something going on. And still to this day, I still feel like there was something that was there. Either an evil spirit or some sort of something that was holding her down. And it wasn't until 3 months later, we go running in the park, just casual. Obviously it's 100 degrees at that time in June. And so we're walking to the park, everything's good. I'm getting into track. At that time I was really heavily involved in running. And I was a top track runner in high school. And I enjoyed doing that. So I said, hey, let's go on a run. Let's go to the park. We go to the park, and she falls. And she said, I'm not feeling too well. And she gave me this blue face, and I said, listen, just go get some water. I'm going to do one more round around the park and come back around. She falls on her side, and she's not breathing. She just stops breathing. Her heart, she's turning blue, and the ambulance come. My brother, for some reason, knew we were there. Somebody must have called him or something like that. We called 911, ambulance get there, pull her into the hospital, and it wasn't until about midnight that my brother shows up. I'm sitting on the stairs waiting to hear back and to make sure she's okay. And my brother's friend, not my brother's friend walks in and says, hey, just so you know, she didn't make it through. I said, what do you mean? My sister was 15 years old. We were not aware of a heart condition that she had. And when that happened, I was like, there's something going around in this house, because at that time, my father's stressing out, and, there's something's got to be said about negative energy. And at that time in our life, there was a lot of negative energy going around, is what I felt. And I felt that had something to do with that happening. And when this whole thing happened at the park, my dad blamed me, because I was the one who said, let's go to the park. Let's go to the park. And he told me no, and he blamed me for it. And I held that inside for me for so long. I mean, at 16, I was just like, I didn't eat. I was like, I didn't want to go anywhere. It was just an awful time for me to know that my sibling was no longer going to be around me anymore. So that really affected how my growth went. But shortly after that, I became a lifeguard. And that kind of pushed me to want to save other people's lives. And I wanted to learn about CPR and just be driven into doing something and stop doing things that are not going to make my life better, like going to college, picking the colleges, and going to work and being responsible. And so that kind of also pushed me to grow up even more at that time. Yeah, so now I don't really have the best relationship with my father. And a part of it has resentment of what happened to us when we were a child. I was blaming partially him for all that happening because he wasn't there. And then going through like a loss of my sister and how he didn't know how to react to us and like nourish us and like give us the love that we needed and showed that was lacking. And we don't have a good relationship now. He's very controlling in ways that it's hard to want to have a good relationship with him. Do I love him? I love my father, but I don't want the manipulation. And it's something that you also do learn in church too. Like that's one thing that I do know is that church manipulates people into believing in whatever belief they have. I'm not saying that you don't need to have a faith, which you definitely do, but it doesn't mean that you have to have a following and fall into a cult where you change your entire life basing it on that cult. And if you could break that up and say, I'm not going to do this anymore, that's amazing. But that's where most people that I think gets manipulation from. I think that now that, going to college, experiencing life, having a grandmother who was there for me in some of the darkest times and always told me that she loved me and that she saw like there was a spark of success that's coming my way and always stayed positive, pushed me to be greater and want more for myself. So now that I have accomplished so much, now that I'm a real estate broker, I have accomplished, Spartan races. I've gone to marathons. I push myself into rooms that I don't want to be in, but I tell myself, well, if you want that, you got to go get it. No one's going to come and get it for yourself. You got to work hard. You got to talk to people. You have to stay positive. Staying positive is what gives you the most luck, I think, in my opinion. And my experience in life has been great now, and I've put a lot of what happened to me into something positive. And it's important. It's important to me to continue passing that torch to other people, that they don't have to be alone, and that, in those rooms of success, there comes rewards when you push yourself. And that's what I look forward to, is more success.